Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm Mark Johnson, Senior Minister of Central Baptist Church and here in Lexington, across from Fayette Mall. We are living in a time of great challenge and tremendous human need. While globalization, telecommunication, and ease of travel have shrunk our world, we discover we are not growing closer together. We are being pulled further apart. Division reigns within our communities, within our congregations, within our own personal families. And yes, even within our own home state, where the motto says, united we stand, divided we fall. While the demands of our world require us to work together, we retreat into the isolation of our comfort zones and the protection of our slender viewpoints. Yet, the essential needs and dangers for the most vulnerable continue to grow without much intervention, the intervention they need and that they deserve. These challenges and pressures are the very types of things clergy, leaders, and many different houses of worship are talking about. The types of things we stand here today to hope in a small way to remedy. I'm grateful to stand with 4 other congregational leaders, Reverend Lori Brock of St. Michael's Episcopal, Reverend Mark Davis of First Presbyterian Church, Reverend Kent Gilbert of Berea United Church of Christ, and Rabbi David Wershafter of this beloved congregation, whose steps we today occupy, Temple Adath Israel. Also joining us is Dr. Bill Hacker, the former Commissioner of the Department of the Public Health for the state of Kentucky, 2004 to 2011. Together, we are engaged in a project where we can work together. Reverend Brock introduced this idea of addressing local medical debt as it has been done in other communities, and from our abiding friendships as colleagues in ministry, and through our past endeavors where we have worked, studied, and prayed together for the good of others, we are now raising money and invite you to join us. This morning you will hear about this need, about the program we are using to aid us, and our plan that we are calling the Commonwealth Forgiveness Project. Even in the shadow of this pandemic, we anticipate turning this corner into Thanksgiving and into the holy days, the holiday season that will follow. We know it all won't be the same, so new, healthy habits are before us, guided as we are by ancient wisdom and sacred scriptures. It is more blessed to give than it is to receive, and our lives find their greatest expression when we use them to band together for the needs of others. Our world needs relief. Our world needs help. Our world needs forgiveness. And it can begin here with us working together. May we find the good that we can do together in a time of great challenge.
Good morning. I'm Ken Gilbert from Union Church in Berea, Kentucky, and honored to be a part of this coalition as we seek to end medical debt. Medical debt is a huge crisis in this country. Over 49 million Americans have some kind of unpaid medical bills that we know are a burden on all aspects of their living. That number in Kentucky is very high. Percentage-wise, we know that somewhere north of 29% of all Kentuckians are bearing unpaid medical debt. It's our hope that by coming together and raising funds that we can buy this debt and forgive it. The money that we're hoping to raise will go towards purchasing the debt on the debt market, which we can do at a much greater reduced cost. We can buy that debt just as creditors might, but instead of forcing families into greater and greater poverty, our hope is that we will simply, in light of our religious traditions and the way our faith leads us, forgive it. The Commonwealth Forgiveness Project is seeking to alleviate debt, and we can do so with your help. In Kentucky, 50% of bankruptcies are related to medical debt. In Appalachia in general, we have roughly twice the debt indebtedness for medical reasons as other parts of the country nationally. So it matters that we come together and stand united in this way. We can help every aspect of living in the Commonwealth and in the Appalachian region by addressing this source of poverty and the result of poverty. We hope that all who are watching will join us and undertake this simple act. Your dollar will go 100 times. Every dollar raised will alleviate up to $100 in medical debt.
Good morning. Love is the foundation of many of our faiths, of all of our faiths. As a Christian, we look at the teachings of Jesus Christ to guide us into what love is. And love is not a bumper sticker or a Bible verse that we tweet out or even a meme on Facebook. Love is manifested in what we do and how we treat each other. Jesus tells us that love is actually even more than just how we treat each other. It is how we treat the person who is at greatest need and is also unknown to us. Today we come together as the Commonwealth Forgiveness Project and invite the city of Lexington, the residents of this state, and even the residents of the great area of Appalachia to come together in love and offer your money, your treasure, for those of us who are able to do that, to offer an act in love to those who are in great need, those whose names are not known to us, but those whose names are known to medical debt collectors, those whose names are known to the lists that prevent them from getting an apartment or a mortgage or a safe place to live, those whose names are known to situations that keep them oppressed under debt. One of the great prayers of the Christian faith, the Lord's Prayer, we pray, forgive us our debts. We certainly understand that in terms of forgive us for the wrongs we have done, but it also speaks to forgive us those things that oppress us, including finances, as we forgive those, as we are able to love and help those who are oppressed find freedom, liberation, and I dare say even love in a world that often feels very lacking. In this season of Thanksgiving, in this season of joy, and even in this season, this particular year of feeling a little lost and alone, this time, this project gives us an opportunity to offer love to people that we don't even know and tell them that the world is indeed good. The world is indeed a place of caring and grace, and that this state and this city of Kentucky is a place of love. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. William Packard. I practiced pediatrics in southeast Kentucky for many years, and then I ended my career in public health in Frankfurt, working for different governors. When I was invited to participate in this event, I jumped at the occasion. I know that faith is important for all of us, and I know that there's a bridge between faith in the soul and faith in health. People today are suffering through death, as already been explained, but especially this year. So when we do have a chance to reach out, whether we know the person or not, we have an opportunity to do good. And doing good is good for you, as well as for those who receive the gifts you give. So I please beg you, reach in and do what you can to help with this very important initiative. Thank you.
More than half a century ago, we recall the statements of the late Martin Luther King Jr., who warned us that injustice in the field of healthcare is inhuman. Inhuman, and he said, among the worst inequalities in our system. And we regret, and we confess, and we acknowledge with remorse that in the over half century since his assassination, we have failed to make sufficient progress in alleviating the woeful disparities of healthcare injustice. According to recent reports, Black Americans are infected with COVID-19 at nearly 3 times the rate of whites, and nearly twice as likely to die from it. The infection rate in the Hispanic and Latinx community are even higher. The data asserts that people of color are more likely to have pre-existing conditions that predispose them to COVID-19 infection. And pointedly, as we gather here today to discuss the medical debt crisis, that people of color are less likely to have health insurance and more likely to work in jobs that do not accommodate remote work. We are here today as people of faith to say that we find the persistent and pervasive injustice in healthcare to be a failure of both our spiritual and social obligations. We believe that all human beings are created in God's image, that all of us are dependent on our human bodies, and that health care is a human right. The Torah teaches us not to extract the cloak, the only remaining covering of our destitute neighbor, as collateral for an overdue loan. Yet our healthcare system shackles thousands of our fellow Kentuckians, millions of fellow Americans, and human beings in debt that they can never get out of. The prophets warn us repeatedly of the moral hypocrisy of maintaining piety while abandoning morality. No amount of prayer, fasting, or ritual can ever make up for the sin of allowing illness to go untreated because people are too poor to pay for it. COVID-19 has further exposed the danger of our collective greed and cruelty. It isn't in our interests for anyone to remain untreated. It's unsafe for poor and rich alike, for asymptomatic carriers to spread a potentially fatal disease. Our health and well-being are intertwined. Loving our neighbor as ourselves is to demand affordable health care for our neighbor. Health care in a nation as wealthy and scientifically advanced as ours should never be out of financial reach or drive a family to financial ruin. This week, Jews around the world read the story of Jacob stealing the blessing of his brother Esau. The time is long overdue for us to reject Jacob's selfishness and to stop depriving our brothers and sisters of what is rightfully theirs. We call upon leaders in the scientific community, business community, and academic community to join us in mitigating this unjust burden of healthcare debt so that all of us can breathe free. Dr. King's words are as true today as when he spoke them all those years ago. Injustice and inequality in healthcare is incompatible with democracy and woefully inhuman. It is a moral and religious obligation to address this crisis so that the fundamental human right to health care free of insurmountable debt, is a blessing that can be shared by all.
Thank you for your time and attention. We hope you will be moved to action. It is a simple thing to ask, who is my neighbor? Too few of us actually know the people in our neighborhood. The reality is that the people of God all over this world, made in a holy and divine image, we are called and summoned to be neighbors to one another. This program of medical debt forgiveness in the Commonwealth is a way to bring love into action. It is a way to become a better neighbor. And I encourage you to ask a simple question, not just in response to this, but as you see someone on the corner, as you hear a bit of news, as you have that feeling that you don't have a word for, or a tear that comes to your eye, you are aware that things are not the way they should be. Ask yourself, what does love require? The answer will not always be obvious, but the question remains persistently and profoundly and powerfully alive and necessary in our age. What does love require of you? What it required of us is to become people committed in this effort to the retirement of medical debt. People we don't know, people who are strangers to us, but they are not strangers in their own community, nor are they strangers to God. We have become too distant, too separate, too easy to say that we don't know one another. But love in action does not require the knowledge of another. It requires the knowledge of oneself. We are summoned by holiness to love. And all the speech about that runs empty, dry, and arid until it is joined in action. So I want to thank Reverend Brock and Rabbi David and Reverend Mark, Kent, Bill Hacker, and the people that have come to make it possible for me to hear this message today. In the days that lie ahead, wear a mask. It's what love requires. The days that lie ahead, when you think of someone, call them so they're less isolated. It is what love requires. And in this particular action, consider what you might do, what love requires of you for neighbors who are at risk of losing their homes because they simply got sick and could not afford in this society. Be well, find cause for joy in life today, give yourself as people of light, and live and walk in that light, and act in love. It is all that is asked and needed and required.
That concludes our time.
Oh, tell them how to get it.
I'm not sure I know how to do it. Lori, is that yours?
Well, if you'd like to donate to the Commonwealth Forgiveness Project, you can visit the websites of, well, I don't know the websites of all of our faith congregations, or contact our faith congregations. We hope to, by Monday, have a live link through RIP Medical that anyone can go through and donate. That way, you can also send a check to the congregations with identified as medical debt, and we will get that to RIP Medical. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our time. Are there questions?
I was to say, is there a financial goal? And also, can you talk about, I know you've said kind of Appalachia in general, are there specific communities and areas that this is specifically targeting?
Yeah, so currently we're specifically targeting the Appalachia area, which will include Kentucky, but also the surrounding Appalachia area to Kentucky. And there is a group that was taking care of more regional debt, and so we were focused on Appalachia. We are currently, I think our current amount that we've raised is in the neighborhood of $15,000, which will pay $1.5 million worth of medical debt. So the great thing about this program is that for every dollar received, it has a 100-fold payout of helping reduce that debt. So if you give $1, you're giving $100 to help reduce a medical debt. If you give $10, it's $1,000. So this money can add up quite quickly. And I don't know if our total target.
We would love to raise $35,000.
We'd like to raise $35,000
Or more.
Or more. So that would be $3.5 million, and we already have $15,000 in hand.
Is there an end date on this, or December 1st?
December, at the end of the year.
December 31st.
Other questions?
I think that's good for me.
I'm trying to think if there's other. So your individual websites are the places to go, or hopefully
RIP Medical.
there should be a link there for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Just as long as you specify Commonwealth Forgiveness Project, then it will go for the cause that we are identifying.
Okay, so
in
this
Appalachia.
organization is a national organization.
Correct.
They're the ones who are kind of doing that dollar.
Correct.
Broker the deal.
They broker the debt to reduce it and help pay it off.
Do we have, I think you may have touched on this a little bit, but refresh me, a number of people that falling into this category?
Oh.
Or is it, I mean, it's so
You guys would
vast.
probably have a better maybe Dr. Patrick, you might
No, I mean,
No, you got it.
the Herald Leader actually reported that some 29% of Kentuckians are bearing medical debt to the extent that it's impoverishing them. And of course, Kentucky is already one of the states that has the highest rate of poverty, certainly among children. So the way that this impacts Kentucky families and families in Appalachia in general is that they are the least likely to receive inexpensive care because often they don't have access to health care in the first place. So anything they do is through emergency services, which is already more expensive. They are then more likely to suffer the consequences of medical debt. So if 29% of Kentuckians are in that category already, we know that the vulnerability is exceptionally multiplied by the fact that they are already at very, very low levels of income and ability to repay. It's unfortunate that medical debt tends to compound higher than other debts as well. Every time that debt is sold to a secondary collection agency, fees are often added. And that means that a $10,000 bill can easily become a $50,000 bill in the course of a year. So this reduction of debt is not just a moral obligation on behalf of givers from our faith traditions, but it is also literally building up the capacity of citizens to be able to participate in the society and to create and build jobs and an economy and a livelihood that is simply worth living.
And how did you all get connected? Do you all work on projects usually together, or how did this
Who
kind
wants
of
to take that?
It's an abiding friendship and collaboration that we've been a part of for many years. And finding that in our conversations we care about many of the same issues and recognize that what we need to do is far greater than what one congregation can do. And it's so important for us to find collaborative ways to work together. So we invite any congregation or house of worship that would like to be a part of this effort to be with us. And we can always do so much more than what we can do individually as we work together. And let me also say that perhaps this could, blossom into something far greater. There may be other target areas of medical debt in our community that we can help launch out of the success of what we do here today.
And I guess my final question is, this organization's been around. Why now? Is it COVID that's added this extra urgency, or what? Why now?
This actually came out of a conversation that we had one afternoon when we were all together talking about life as pastoring congregations. All of us have congregations that are deeply committed to outreach and to social justice. COVID presents some very real challenges about how we live that out. How do we live that out of our faith to seek and serve God in all people? And as I jokingly say, pray long enough, loud enough, and God gives you an answer. About a week after I had that conversation with this group, I got an email from a friend of mine's church, and he was working in his church to forgive all the medical debt in his area of the Pacific Northwest. So I called him up and said, hey, this looks like something we could do in the world of COVID that would have a great impact. So he linked me to RIP Medical. I got some information, and then I sent it to all of them and said, what do you think? And then we had another meeting at the great table at Ashland, and as we talked about just how this really holds it within it all of our commitments, not only to seek and serve the least of these, but also just the impact of COVID. That while the debt that we're buying now will not be COVID related, the fact is that coronavirus has impacted medical debt. I mean, you don't stay in the ICU for 17 days without huge amounts of medical debt. And what we do know is that many people who have the worst experiences with COVID already have underlying medical issues. So if you imagine that medical bill on top of medical bills they already have. So just in that conversation, we started to think, this is something that we can do now. It is something that we hope inspires other congregations, and for that matter, just other people. If you go on the website, you'll see that there's some people that have just donated $50,000 because they have that. So, that hopefully will inspire that. So we can at least begin to address this part of the problem of injustice in the healthcare system in this country.
I'd like to offer one thought.
Yes.
I just got a statement for a surgery in my family, and the top line number was, I think, $13,000. And then you go through all the adjustments and yada yada blah blah, and so now we owe $700. Okay, well, a lot of people don't have insurance. The top line number is where it starts and where it stops because of the scandal of health insurance in this country, and then it multiplies, as Ken said, very, very quickly. And we've known about the cost to people's lives for a long time. In 2007, the Harvard School of Public Health identified medical expense contributing to 2/3 of the first-time interest to homelessness. People have been losing their homes for years because they're sick. That's just wrong. And so as a practical matter, in terms of how you communicate this, I encourage you to encourage your listeners or your readers, take out your last health statement, last time you got a bill. Look at what the top line is. That's what a lot of people are paying. And don't kid yourselves at the bottom line that I experienced because of relief. I've already got a lot of relief. So contributing to relief for some other people is really what this is about.
I'd be remiss not to ask, what sounds like the governor is going to make some announcements today on houses of worship, and this is something that goes beyond the walls of a congregation, beyond the walls of a church, temple. Just any comments on the fact that no matter what is kind of announced today or in the coming months, there are ways that we can all be still showing that love that our faiths.
Our faith is not a building. Our faith is far beyond the building, and even though we aren't able to be in person together like we would want to be, it doesn't mean we can't work together, and it doesn't mean that the doors of our ministry are closed. The doors of our ministry must continue even through these difficult and challenging times. We are learning new skills, and we are presented with new opportunities. And instead of thinking about what is being taken from us, we need to think about what we can give. And that's what houses of worship are really called to do. How can we care for our community? How can we have great health precautions? And then how we can continue to do our mission and our ministries together. And this is one example of doing exactly that.
Then you can't get a better visual. These doors are closed, right? But our buildings are closed. So we're playing a game. So the temple is open, the church is open, the doors are closed.
And we are relating to each other. We're relating to each other through virtual meetings, Zoom meetings, personal contact, email. Our work has not stopped, even though the nature and way in which we're doing our work must adapt.
Well, I just thought I was just ask since we're here together. Okay.
And all our congregations are
Oh yes, please go.
Okay, got one more question.
One quick thing, if each of you could come up to the mic, you say your name and your title, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Reverend Mark D. Johnson, Senior Minister, Central Baptist Church, Lexington, Kentucky.
David Wirtschafter, Rabbi, Temple Adith Israel, Lexington, Kentucky.
Mark Davis, Teaching Elder, First Presbyterian Church of Lexington, Kentucky.
Reverend Kent Gilbert, pastor of Union Church in Berea, Kentucky.
Reverend Laurie Brock, rector of St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Lexington, Kentucky.
I'm Dr. Dr. William Hacker. I'm a deacon at the First Presbyterian Church in Lexington, Kentucky.
Great.
Yay.
Thank
One
you
more
all.
to get the names crossed out.
Yeah.